Thank you for staying tuned. The cost of living continues to soar across Nigeria, while access to affordable housing remains a growing challenge for millions in Abuja and other major cities. Skyrocketing rents and arbitrary eviction notices are leaving many residents uncertain about having a shelter over their heads. Well, Charles Alpha examines global housing models that Nigeria can adopt to ensure fairer and more affordable living conditions.
Easy. It has not been easy, especially for hustling people like me.
Many Nigerians, including civil servants and low-income earners, have been forced to relocate to the suburbs or even neighboring states in search of cheaper accommodation. Rents for a one-bedroom apartment in Abuja and other major cities are said to reach as high as 3 million naira, excluding additional costs such as legal, agency and caution fees. From my interaction with some tenants in the city center, rents have become unbearable in the last 3 years. House owners, on the other hand, attribute the sharp rise in rent to the present economic realities.
Land is very expensive. One length of road now is about 20,000 naira. One pillar will take 4 lengths.
By law, a landlord must serve notice before evicting a tenant. 7 days for a weekly tenancy, 1 month for a monthly tenancy, and 6 months for a yearly tenancy. But in practice, tenants say these provisions are often ignored.
He told us he was going to sell, but within a month he sold the property, and the new landlord is asking us to evacuate. He's giving us 1 week to move out.
The national and state assemblies have at various times expressed concerns over this trend, calling for policies that protect both landlords and tenants in a fair and transparent manner.
We need to rise and direct authorities of government to put a control. The highest percentage of increment that we should think of for any time that we want to increase should not be anything above 20%. Experts recommend that Nigeria adopts a stronger rent through accessible housing finance. Charles Alpha, NTA News.
Now, the rising costs of rent and growing tension between landlords and tenants have once again brought the state's tenancy law into sharp focus. I'm talking about Lagos. The law, first enacted in 2011, seeks to promote fairness in the rental market, but enforcement remains a challenge. Awul Yusuf Jibo reports.
For many residents, finding and keeping a home in Lagos is becoming a battle for survival. Some tenants say their landlords now demand 2 or even 3 years' rent in advance, while others speak of sudden evictions without notice. The Lagos State Tenancy Law, enacted in 2011, seeks to address such grievances. But the question remains, how many Lagosians even know it exists? Boluwatife Shitu is a teacher. She says with what she earns and the current cost of rent, she fears that someday she might wake up homeless.
You know, when you are paying the rent of maybe 250K, and before you know it, you're busy with 150,000, that's 400,000, it's too much.
Those agencies feel something like that. I beg, may they help us find solution for this to say some place. It's not easy.
There has to be a lot of engagement between the legislature and the judiciary to ensure that the procedure for resolution of tenancy-related issues are as smooth as possible, and they encourage investment in real estate in Lagos.
On the flip side, developers and landlords say recovering their investments is not as simple as it sounds. They decry the high cost of construction, property maintenance, and managing tenants under the current economic realities.
You don't do a plan again, and that's because you can't plan some of these construction costs. Iron Road at the time was 225,000 naira per ton. It moved to 525,000, 750,000. Iron Road, as I'm talking to you right now, TMT is 1.2 million naira per metric ton.
As Lagos lawmakers push for stricter enforcement of the tenancy law, both landlords and tenants are being reminded that understanding their rights and responsibilities remains the first step toward a fairer and more stable housing system. In Lagos, Awul Yusuf Jubo, NTA News.
All right, let's bring in our guests. Mr. Bala Mohammed Yusuf. He's the Director, Legal Services, Federal Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. Mr. Yusuf, thank you for joining us on Weekend File.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad to be here with you.
Fantastic. We're glad to have you here. I'm sure you've seen the reports you've had from the tenants and also the perspective of the landlord. Now, what is the ministry's stance? Because there are a lot of issues on ground, especially affordability, accessibility to information that could be readily available to citizens. What's your take?
Yes, thank you very much. We all know that the issue of this inflation affects every aspect of our life, but the most disturbing among them is the inflation that affects shelter and food, because shelter and food are indispensable to life. So that's why the federal government, especially the Federal Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, comes up with so many initiatives to provide, to increase the supply of housing, to make it more accessible and more affordable by the renewed hope housing projects all over the country. So that is what, and then the establishment of building materials hub in all the regions of the federation to reduce the cost of construction of houses. So.
Go ahead, sir. I thought you were done with your
Yes. So that is exactly the aspect from which the Federal Ministry of Housing is trying to address the housing deficit in the country by increasing the supply. Because all this we are talking about is brought about by the forces of demand and supply. The supply is limited, the demand is higher in all, especially in the major cities of the country. And that is what the Federal Ministry of Housing is trying to do, to address the paucity of, the deficit housing delivery to the citizenry.
Okay, Mr. Yusuf, from what you're saying, of course, we know the ongoing renewed hope cities and estates with a target of 10,000, homes for citizens. But accessibility to these homes is the question here. And with the issue going on the arbitrary, eviction of, tenants, and also the skyrocketing increase in rent, that's the debate. Gladly, we've seen the legislative inputs of 20% cap, for any increment, which Nigerians are hoping, that will scale through. We don't know what the ministry make out of these whole circumstances, while citizens await the completion of some of these estates, which are still ongoing construction process, I want to believe.
Yes,
okay.
Any discourse, the Federal Ministry of Housing is a critical stakeholder in every discourse about housing delivery. And this issue of tenant and the landlord is of great concern to us, because so many states have come up with laws. Unfortunately, the laws were not strictly enforced, and that really makes it somehow inefficacious. So the Federal Ministry of Housing is really in support of the current move to come up with a robust legal regime to address the crisis, between the tenants and the landlords, bearing in mind that rights and duties are complementary. The tenants has rights, but then there are duties they also have to perform. And we all understand that they are all affected by the landlord also consider the cost of construction, the cost of financing. Some of them go through the mortgage before they can source for finance to be able to construct these houses. So the Federal Ministry of Housing is coming with the idea of, first of all, trying to increase the production of mass housing production. Then to come up with a possible incentive to incentivize the production of houses, to be able to soften the condition for the landlord to be able to build more houses, and at least to minimize the housing deficit, and to enable the tenants to be able to access all these houses, to own houses. When you construct houses, and the Nigerians and Nigerians are able to own houses, it will reduce the number of tenants also, because the most important thing is for the people to own their own houses. And that is what the Federal Ministry of Housing is doing by constructing houses for middle income earners and low income earners at an affordable price. Recently, you must have heard about the coming of the approval by the federal government for a uniform price, which is very affordable to the citizenry. So that is actually what the Federal Ministry of Housing is trying to do. First of all, to increase the number of houses for the citizenry to own dwelling houses.
You know, it's good you kept hammering on the word affordability,
yes,
which is very important, because yes, it's one thing to have these houses there and not being able to qualify to
exactly
afford it. So let's take a break, Mr. Yusuf. We'll be right back. Thank you for staying tuned. Kano is facing a growing housing crisis as rising population and economic pressures push rent prices higher, leaving many residents struggling to secure affordable accommodations. Well, legal experts are now calling on the state government to review and update the nearly 3-decade-old Kano State tenancy laws to better protect both tenants and landlords. Awal Salisu reports.
Kano continues to experience housing challenge due to its rising population and economic pressures. The increased demand for accommodation, coupled with inflation and high construction costs, is pushing rent higher and straining both tenants and landlords. Many residents struggle to afford rent, while landlords face difficulties in maintaining properties.
The landlord frequently takes tenants to court because they often fail to pay rent on time due to low income, leading to ongoing disputes.
Legal experts Lawan is urging the Kano State government and House of Assembly to review the outdated 1998 tenancy law.
The law is before the House of Assembly, although it has been amended once during the administration of Al Ibrahim Shekaru. Something has been done with regards to increment, so that whenever landlords are going to increase their rent, first of all, it has to be notified and it has to be reasonable.
Lawan stressed that updated tenancy laws could help ease tensions and provide lasting solutions to Kano's deepening housing crisis. He emphasized the need for clear guidelines on rent control, eviction, and tenant-landlord's rights to ensure fairness in the housing sector. In Kano, Awal Salisu, NTA News.
And Rivers State is not left out, as residents there are faced with lack of affordable houses, overpopulation, as well as increase in rural urban migration, which has been identified as some of the factors. Let's hear from Emmanuel Lene.
The rising cost of living, inflation, and dwindling disposable income. Many landlords in Port Harcourt have arbitrarily continued to increase their house rents. In recent times, a one-bedroom flat that in the past cost between 300 to 400,000 naira has suddenly skyrocketed to about 1.2 million naira, while two-bedrooms flats now cost between 2.5 million naira to 4.5 million naira, depending on the landlord, location, and state of facilities. The reason for this, as adduced by the house owners whose houses, in most cases, were built over 10 to 20 years ago, is what is most baffling, as they keep blaming the sharp increases on increase in cost of building materials. However, housing experts blame the situation on several other factors.
There are no mortgage banks that are working and helping the industry. Most commercial banks don't lend to real estate. There is no government incentive for development. So the few developers that go into it hit one or two challenges.
There have been houses deficit over the years, because as we are growing towards about 7 million people or more than that in Rivers State, the houses have not been so adequate.
Although attempts have been made by the Rivers State House of Assembly to regulate house rents through legislation without any positive result yet, many see this as counterproductive and a trend that could discourage potential investors.
Because there's a government control or price control legally, it will just give birth to a black market system that makes it even worse.
As residents continue to grapple with the situation, many believe that proactive measures in public-private partnership in the housing sector can ameliorate the plight of the people.
If you increase the number of landlords will start begging the tenants by making incentive in housing very high.
The people are also proposing the need for government at various levels to declare a state of emergency in the housing sector to address some of the concerns raised. In Port Harcourt, Emmanuel Lene, NTA News.
Okay, Mr. Yusuf, I saw your reaction, watching those reports. I want to take us back to the Kanu on implementation of these laws, which experts are saying, will go a long way in easing the burden. What is the ministry doing, or what strategies are they adopting to ensure states, adopt these laws and domesticate them?
Thank you very much. The Federal Ministry of Housing is a federal, as the name suggests, is a federal agency. And under the Land Use Act, sections 1, 2, and 5, the control of land is vested in the state governors. So, and then the state governors also are empowered to administer this land for the common benefit of the people of that state. So, and the issue of tenancy, regulating rent or tenancy, is vested in the states. The regulating tenancy in the Federal Capital Territory is vested in the Federal Capital Territory Administration by virtue of Section 4, subsection 7 of the Constitution, which provides that the Federal Capital Territory is to be regarded as a state, as one of the states of the Federation. And they are empowered to make laws on issues that do not fall within the exclusive legislative list. The issue of tenancy does not fall within either the exclusive legislative list or concurrent. So it is within the residuary powers of the FCT. And that power is exercisable by the National Assembly. Because National Assembly is like the State House of Assembly of the FCT. So that's why the current bill is before the National Assembly. So the Federal Ministry of Housing has very little influence over that, and whatever it is going to be persuasive, not coercive to the states. So that's the problem. Actually, every state has to come up with their own robust legal framework to ensure that the rights of tenants and that of the landlords are protected. And the tenants should know that, and the landlord also should know that rights and duties are complementary. For you to enjoy one right, you have to perform certain duties.
You said that before, Mr.
Yes.
Yusuf.
Yes.
Now, which brings us back to the Renewed Hope Housing Estates, more like a low-hanging fruit for some who have not been able to get a hold of it. What hope are you giving Nigerians? And how many, I'm not saying you should give us statistics of the number of beneficiaries, but where is the hope, for civil servants and even people who are not civil servants to get a hold of this housing?
Well, there is this National Housing Fund under the Federal Mortgage Bank. So the Federal Ministry of Housing is trying to bring out an effective mortgage arrangement that will enable low-income earners to be able to buy these houses through the Federal Mortgage Bank. So they will finance, and then the Federal Ministry of Housing, like I said before, is committed to massive production of houses, and to at least to make it available for low and the middle income earners. So that is exactly what the Federal Ministry of Housing, and I assure you, depending on the budgetary disposal, the ministry is poised to deliver on that.
You know why I asked that question, Mr. Yusuf, is because when you look at the commitment from because I know it's a collaboration, it's not fully funded by the ministry.
Yes.
So when you look at the other aspect, what citizens are expected to pay, is it friendly? Maybe I should be direct.
Well, it is considering the current realities.
Okay.
It is friendly. And that's why one of the things also is that the Federal Ministry of Housing is going into partnership with the private sector, because even though housing is one of the fundamental objective of governance under the Constitution, Chapter 2, under the fundamental objective and directive principles of state policies. So it's one of the social objectives of governance. So definitely the Federal Ministry of Housing is trying to do its best. First of all, it will maybe go into an arrangement with other relevant government agencies to incentivize, like I said before, to make the cost of production at least within the barest minimum to enable low-income and middle-income earners to afford housing.
Okay. Let's leave the conversation there, but of course not the issue, because of course you're aware to continue to dominate conversations, but we'll put our eyes on the prize. Thank you very much, Mr. Bala Mohammed Yusuf. Thank you for coming on Weekend File.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
So let's take a break. We'll be back shortly. Stay tuned.